Instead, the sun god approaches the entrance to the Duat. The entrance is located somewhere in the western desert. When Ra arrives at this gate, he is greeted by the gods of the desert, the Netcheru Zemit. Ra himself appears in his solar bark, the great boat or barge which he will use to sail through the underworld. In the artistic imagery, Ra appears as a beetle. This beetle is also a hieroglyph, the hieroglyph Kheper. Kheper, or Khepri, can mean manifestation or even to appear. In other words, Ra appears in his morning form. The imagery conveys his form at the dawn. Basically, it predicts his successful journey through the underworld. Ra is not alone in his solar bark. He is accompanied by two deities. A figure stands to either side of the beetle. One of them is called Heka, meaning magic, and one of them is called Sia, meaning divine perception. It's not clear if these are literally two gods, or if they are simply personifications of a concept. Magic and perception are tools that Ra and the deceased will need to progress through the underworld. Perhaps the imagery is simply telling us, to cross the Duat, you need these attributes and skills. Either way, Heka and Sia appear on either side of the sun god in almost every image. Ra approaches the entrance to the Duat, and he is greeted by the gods who wait outside within the desert. Now, he comes to the first gate. Gate number 1 appears as a doorway. It is tall, with a serpent between the door posts. This depiction is quite simple compared to what comes later, perhaps because this first gate is the entrance to the Duat. You don't want something too ostentatious for a mysterious land. The gate, or maybe the serpent who guards it, is called the One Who Guards the Desert, and upon the gate, hieroglyphs recite a text. It says, "He, the serpent, is upon this door. The serpent will open this door for Ra. Sia, divine perception, says to that serpent, open your gate for Ra. Open your door for he of the two horizons." Behind the gate, the hidden chamber, or the tomb, is in darkness, until the forms of this god appear. Behind the gate, the hidden chamber, the tomb, or the underworld, is in darkness, and it will remain that way until the forms of Ra appear. The gods speak to the serpent opens the gate, and after Ra enters, the door closes behind him. Those who are left in the desert cry out when they hear that gate closing. Ra passes the first gate. Now he enters the Duat itself. Ra comes into the underworld, and immediately he is greeted by 12 figures. These figures are collectively called the Doers of Ma'at. They are the people who, on earth, acted properly, gave offerings to the god and to the deceased. As a result of their piety and good action, they become part of the blessed within the underworld. Now, Ra does not appear as a beetle. He appears in his more classic form. He appears as a human male, but with a ram's head. This is the form of Ra that exists during the nighttime. The name of this form is Uf Ra, or the flesh of Ra. He sits within a shrine upon his bark, and around that shrine, a long serpent coils. This serpent is called the Encircling One, or Mehen. Once again, Ra is accompanied in his bark by Heka, magic, and Sia, perception. Ahead of the bark, there is also a crew of 4 human males. These are called the Duat Dwellers, or Duatiu. They clutch a rope and they pull the bark of Ra through this hour. As Ra is greeted by the blessed dead, the people who acted properly on earth, he speaks to these gods. He says, "Behold, I have tied on the fillet or headband, and I have taken possession of the shrine which is in the earth. Sia, perception, and Heka, magic, have joined me, to manage your affairs, to assign you your duties. One will not remove breath or life from you. The wrongdoers will not enter the duat after you. Your offerings are yours. Ra acknowledges those who acted well in life. He protects their breath, confirms their offerings, and his two assistants, Heka and Sia, will give each soul a place and a role in the duat. Having entered the land of the dead, Ra immediately begins acting as a ruler. He protects the obedient, fulfills their basic needs, and he establishes the proper order of things. Like the pharaoh on earth, Ra organizes society for the dead. Moving past the do-gooders, Ra now comes to their opposite. A line of figures bent over, with their hands tied behind their back, stand before the sun god. These figures are the wrongdoers, those who acted improperly, who did not follow the path of Ma'at during life. These figures are bound and bent, and they are guarded by a deity who holds a staff or a spear. The description is evocative. It says, "These are the desert dwellers in the hall of Ra. They are the ones who have complained on earth, those who have spoken wrongly against Ra. They are the oppressors who have offended the two horizons. The deity guarding them, wielding a staff or a spear, punishes the wrongdoers, and that god calls out to them, taunting and lording it over the damned. The guardian deity sneers, 'My father Ra is justified against you. I am justified against you. You wretches are bound, tied up with firm ropes, and I have ordered that you be bound. Your arms will not be opened. The magic of Ra is against you. My father, Ra, is powerful against you, but your evil is yours. Your slaughtering is against you. Your punishment is upon you. You are summoned to wrongdoing." The guardian rages against Ra's enemies. Notably, he describes the punishments in the same terminology as the rewards for the do-gooders. For the blessed dead, the gods promised, "Your offerings are yours." But for the wrongdoers, the gods promised, "Your evil is yours." Ra passes the second gate and enters the third hour. Ra passes 12 shrines. Inside each shrine, a mummy appears. The mummies are painted black to represent the decay of death, and they are called the protected gods who are in the duat, or underworld. Above the shrines, a great serpent named the Fiery One protects the buildings and the mummies who lie within. Ra speaks to the mummies and says, "Open your shrines so that my light may enter your darkness. I found you when you were mourning and your shrines were closed, but now I give breath to your noses and I have assigned you your blessed state." In short, Ra awakens the dead, restoring them to life after their shrines or tombs were sealed. In the darkness of the underworld, the recently deceased gain new life thanks to the shining benevolence of Ra. All who enter the duat and have acted well upon earth enjoy life and light from the greatest of the gods. Next, Ra's boat sails over a lake. This is the Lake of Fire, Shey Chebet. In this lake, 12 more beings appear. Again, they're shaped like mummies, but they have plants growing between them. These beings are called the gods who are in the Lake of Fire. And once again, Ra gives them life, offerings, and all good things. They receive bread, beer, and water from the great god. So, while the lake is fiery, those within are unharmed, even protected, and life emerges from the waters. Curious. Finally, Ra approaches a most important group. This time, the sun god's bark comes before a group of deities. There are 9 of them, plus one more at the front. The being at the front, holding a spear, is named Atum, the one who is complete. The 9 figures are a divine council. This scene is important because Atum and the council are gathering before a snake. A long serpent, its coils winding back and forth in a zigzag, stands between Atum and the council. That serpent is none other than Apep, Apophis, the great devourer, the enemy of Ra and all creation. Apophis threatens the sun god and his followers. So Atum and the divine council come to subdue him. The 9 gods who do this are called the council that drives away Apophis, Jajat Kesfet Apep, and hieroglyphs in the scene describe what is happening. The glyphs say, quote, "That which Atum has done on behalf of Ra, he praises Ra and he overthrows the rebel Apophis. Atum himself speaks to Apophis, and he says, 'You, Apophis, are upside down so that you cannot rise. You are enchanted so that you cannot find yourself. My father, Ra, is justified against you. I am justified against you. I have driven you away on behalf of Ra. I have punished you on behalf of the 2 horizons.'" End quote. So Atum and the divine council gather to subjugate Apophis, the great enemy. Naturally, they are victorious, for they work on behalf of Ra. They drive Apophis to the ground so that he can never rise. And as they do, Ra's boat sails by in safety. Apophis will not threaten the sun god or creation in this hour of the night. Ruling Lady of Nourishment, Nebet Sejefau. Again, she is guarded by serpents, called She Who Lights Up for Ra. 2 mummy guardians appear, as with the previous gate. These guards are named Earthquake, which is one hell of a title. The guardians bow as Ra approaches. The gate opens. Ra passes through, and those left behind cry out, wailing, as the doors seal shut. The solar boat now enters the 4th hour. I won't spend too long here, but there is one aspect I want to talk about. In this hour, the text deals heavily with time, the concept of duration, eternity, everlastingness. At the beginning of this hour, various gods come forth to praise Ra, and they specifically emphasize his power over time. The gods say, quote, "Hail to you, Ra of the 2 horizons, the permanent one, or one without end, the master of years, the one who is duration, time that cannot be ended." End quote. In other words, the gods call out to Ra, explicitly identifying him as the infinite, imperishable Lord. This is important. You see, in hour 4, time itself is undergoing a process of rebirth. Ra continues sailing, but soon he reaches a pit. A great hole or expanse opens up in the underworld. Within this pit lies a snake, a coiled serpent. The snake is a goddess. Her name is the Removing One, she who gives birth to 12 serpents, which she destroys and which she swallows afterwards. What does that mean? Well, the answer appears next to her. On either side of this pit and the serpent, 12 goddesses appear. The women stand in 2 groups of 6, with names next to each other. These goddesses are the hours, the 12 hours of night. The snake is their mother. Apparently, the 4th hour of the Duat is one of the places where time itself is renewed and reborn. The serpent within her pit devours each hour of the night. She eats one of the goddesses, but in turn, the serpent gives birth to those goddesses, those hours, every night. Thus, time is constantly renewing. Within the Duat, the very essence of night and its hours renews and reforms. The Egyptians recognized time as a measurable thing, part of the universe, and thus part of creation, the work of the gods. They also believed that time was infinite and cyclical. Time renewed constantly, whether it was the renewal of the day every 24 hours, the renewal of the season every 120 days, or the renewal of the year every 3 seasons. They understood time as an endless but ever-repeating concept. This is why the serpent is called the removing one, because as each hour passes, she consumes it. But she is also the one who gives birth to those hours again. The cycle, apparently, is always happening in the depths of the Duat. Ra carries on, passing more features of the underworld. I wish I could stop and describe them all, but there is simply too much going on. Too many references to obscure deities and phenomena. Stuff that is interesting but would only confuse the journey. So let's move on. Humanity is divided and organized. Ra passes over them and, presumably, approves of the system. Soon, he comes to gate number 5. The 5th gate is named the Ruling Lady of Lifetime, Nebet Achau. It has the usual guardians, great serpents named She Who Lights Up for Ra, and mummies named He with the True Heart and He with the Mysterious Heart. The mummies and the serpents bow as Ra approaches. The gate opens, Ra sails through, and as the doors close behind him, those left behind cry out in anguish. It is now time for the Hall of Osiris. Normal hieroglyphs to write this scene. They substituted other glyphs that looked similar visually or sounded similar phonetically. Basically, they used a code to hide the text. Why did they do that? Well, the Judgment Hall of Osiris is, arguably, the most important scene in the Book of Gates. A lot happens here that affects the world of the dead and the world of the living. The hieroglyphs that describe these events have their own magic. To read them, speak them aloud, is to bring that power forth. You don't want that kind of magic falling into the wrong hands. So the ancients swapped out the hieroglyphs for similar versions to obscure the text. Doing that, they ensured security. The only ones who could read these passages were those who already possessed the knowledge. Only people who had earned that knowledge in life could translate the glyphs and use this magic in the underworld. Of course, a pharaoh always had access to that information, so in a royal burial chamber, the cryptographic or code texts were no barriers to the king's immortality. But it was good to have the security. The second interesting feature is a title. The Book of Gates, overall, does not have an official title or name, at least not one that has survived. We call it the Book of Gates because of the gates that appear throughout, but the book itself never says what the actual title is. That is different from other underworld texts, like the Book of the Dead, aka the Book of Coming Forth by Day, or the Amduat, aka the Book of the Hidden Chamber. The Book of Gates is far more secretive than those ones. It never tells us its name. Then again, maybe it does. In the Judgment Hall of Osiris, we do get one caption, a short text that maybe indicates the name. In this scene, a line of hieroglyphs read, Mejat net nej user em duatiu. This translates to, the Book of Protecting Osiris among those of the Duat. That's an interesting title. Does it refer to the entire Book of Gates, or just the Judgment Hall of Osiris? That is hard to tell. This title does not appear anywhere else in the text, just the Osiris Hall. So the title might be something close to a chapter title, rather than the entire book. Or maybe this hall and this scene are a distinct thing, a book within a book. It's hard to say. Since the title does not appear anywhere else, that seems to indicate this is a special chapter. The Hall of Osiris, the scene of judgment, is an important place, arguably the most important place in the entire text. So perhaps the ancients felt this chapter deserved its own title, distinct from the larger Book of Gates. Either way, it's an intriguing caption. Ra comes into the Hall of Osiris, and he witnesses the King of the Dead triumphing over his enemies. The god Thoth chases away the pig that represents Seth, and with safety assured, Ra can pause for a moment. He rests in the hall, filling his form with new energy. It is a vital stage in his journey towards rebirth. And all of this appeared on the walls of a burial chamber in obscure, jumbled glyphs. Visually and magically, the Judgment Hall of Osiris is the central component of the entire Book of Gates. The Judgment Hall comes after Hour 5. We are almost halfway through the Book of Gates as a whole, but it is time to pause. Let's take a break while Ra enjoys his rest. The first half of the Book of Gates focuses on some key concepts. Organization, or order, is a big part of the tale. The gods organize the offerings and the punishments. They divide humanity into its various groups. They establish the places where different souls and gods will live. We also have a big focus on time. The concept of time and its renewal plays a prominent role in the underworld. The sun god Ra and other deities are responsible for this phenomenon. So the natural world, with its own sense of time and movement, is established here in the Duat. Those are two of the principal themes. Probably the most important one, though, is the relationship between the living world and the dead. Many of the souls who appear in the Book of Gates are there based on one of two criteria. The do-gooders, the people who lived proper lives on Earth, receive their rewards in the Duat. The wrongdoers, those who did not live a good life, they receive their punishments. The Book of Gates places a lot of focus on the behavior you are supposed to undertake in life. Piety, making offerings to the gods and the deceased. That is a good thing to do in the ancient Egyptian worldview. Doing that properly when you are supposed to, and living according to the rules or the order of the natural world, that behavior in life will earn you rewards in death. Near the place where the corpse of this god is. End quote. Essentially, the living cannot see Ra's corpse because the artists have not drawn it, and minor deities or dangerous beings within the Duat also cannot see it. Only the blessed dead, the ones who acted properly in life and gained entrance to the Duat, they can see the corpse. The do-gooders are rewarded with a glimpse of Ra's fundamental nature, and when they come to a place called the Benben House, they can see that corpse. The Benben is a reference to creation. When the universe was forming, the first piece of land or matter was called Benben. In ancient Egypt, the Benben itself appeared at the top of obelisks and the peaks of pyramids. So as long as the dead souls visit a necropolis or a temple, they will see the corpse of Ra. The idea seems to be a link between the world of the living, with its physical monuments, and the world of eternity, with its places of mystery and power. The gods carry the invisible corpse of Ra, and the sun god speaks to these deities as they do so. Quote, Ra says to the 12 carriers, "Receive my image, embrace your mysteries, so that you may rest in the Benben house, at the place in which my corpse lies. That which is in me, my essence, is a mystery, and your arm conceals it." End quote. The 12 gods participate in a key ritual. They are concealing or protecting the mystery of Ra, the very essence of his power. Doing this, the gods keep Ra safe from his enemies, like the great devourer, Apophis. For if Apophis, or any threat, cannot see the corpse of Ra, they cannot consume it. So the 12 deities are not just porters carrying a body, they are helping Ra to journey safely past the dangers. They say, quote, "Your Ba, soul, belongs to the sky, O foremost of the horizon, Ra. It is your shadow that crosses the mysterious place. Your corpse belongs on the earth, even though you are in the sky. We restore Ra to the sky, since you are separated from the earth and your corpse. You, Ra, breathe when you rest in your corpse, which lies in the Duat." End quote. I had to edit and adapt this passage to make it a bit clearer, but the gist is that Ra's corpse, his mystery, remains on Earth and within the Duat. But of course, Ra is a sky god, crossing the heavens by day and shining on the earth. These deities protect the corpse of Ra, while the sun god is crossing the daytime sky. And when Ra comes to the 6th hour of the night, they help him to reunite with his body. Why is this happening? Why is Ra's corpse in the underworld at all? Why does he even have a corpse? Why did the Egyptians create such a convoluted story here? Earlier, I touched on some of the literal and metaphorical explanations within the Book of Gates. For one thing, the text outlines the reasons why every night the sun disappears, why it seems to go out in the west and then reappear at dawn in the east. Makes sense in its own logic. The idea of Ra having a corpse and coming to meet with it every night kind of ties everything together. If the sun god sailed across the sky and the Duat, he would remain essentially distant. But the Egyptians understood that sunlight and heat were powerful forces on the earth. Light brought life to the fields, the flowers, the animals, and humans. So the ancients viewed nature as fundamentally connected. Everything affected everything else. That was especially true of the sun. So while it may seem strange for Ra to have a corpse at all, it was a powerful metaphor. It brought Ra to earth, literally. It made him more accessible in certain ways. And it explained that mysterious power of the sunlight to encourage growth and life. Apophis comes forth, once again, as a deadly threat, but the gods are prepared and they restrain him. And Ra, mighty and splendid, undoes the damage he has caused. In another scene, we find a group of mummies. They lie on beds guarded by a snake, a nice snake called Neheb. These mummies are the followers of Osiris, the sleeping ones who are in a state of weariness. In other words, they are the recently deceased. They lie sleeping, waiting for their resurrection or awakening in the Duat. That awakening comes when Ra, full of new light and energy, shines upon the mummies. The hieroglyphs give a wonderful description of their rising to new life. Quote, "O ones who are in the Duat, the followers of Osiris, the sleeping ones who are in a state of weariness. The god Duati, a form of Ra, speaks to them, saying, O gods in the Duat, followers of the ruler of the West, Osiris, who are stretched out on their side, lying on their beds, may your flesh rise up, may your bones come together, may you embrace your limbs, may your flesh be united. Sweet breath will come to your noses, your mummy wrappings will loosen, your headdresses or headcloths will uncover, and light will come to your eyes, so that you may see the light through them. Raise yourself from your weariness to receive your fields, the estates that belong to you, and the water that belongs to you, who are content with Ra. For these deceased, their refreshment is water. Neheb is guarding their corpses, but their souls, their bars, they move to the field of reeds to take hold of their refreshment. Their offering is bread, their beer is sacred, their refreshment is water. Whoever makes an offering to the deceased on earth that person will become a mummy on his bed. End quote. That speech summarizes the core message of the Book of Gates. The light of Ra shines upon the deceased and awakens them to new life. They rise from their beds or coffins, shake off their mummy wrappings, and go forth. They receive farmland to till and offerings to sustain their energies. And for the living, the promise is made clear. Anyone who gives prayers and offerings to the dead, to the gods, will receive this treatment in eternity. This gate is called the Artifact of its Lord, or Chemut Nebes. She is guarded by serpents and mummies who protect the doors. Ra, on his boat, sails up to the gate. His two assistants, Magic and Perception, speak to the guardians. The doors open. The solar barge sails through. The doors close behind. And those left in Hour 6 cry out as the sun carries on.